Hello everyone, this is Darryl20, and welcome to episode 81 of Darryl20's Let's Play of ATM10 to the Skies, where today, I'm making a Manhattan module. I don't know what it does. Warning, unleashes catastrophic chaos only for those who wish to leave a lasting impression or a crater. I don't know anything about that thing, though it does get me 30 XP levels for handing it in. So let's be smart for a change and actually retrieve all my EXP levels from my many different dudes. So 956 levels of experience right now. So now when I do the hand-in, we've got 986 levels, which is pretty crazy. I like it. So we did the thing? I guess we did the thing. So now I can make the Oblivion Shard, right? I should be able to autocraft most of those things. And making this should not be too hard. We just need a couple time crystal blocks. And then we just need one. We should have some time fluid. 2. And Oblivion Shard. Hooray! ATM star piece. Complete. So that's the next component of the ATM star piece. That said, I'm curious what the whole Manhattan module does. So what does it do? Like the Manhattan module. Is there like a use for it? Like aside from this kind of thing? I don't see any. Is it like a work in progress? Because like usually there's like a thing, right? Does Oratech have a book? I don't think it has a book because it has like the in-game guide thingy. Ooh, don't place this unless you know what you're doing. Okay. I do like black holes. That's always a fun mechanic. So fun that I made one. I don't think there's a book. So if there's no book, maybe it's work in progress still? Manhattan module or a tech. I don't know. I don't know. So I guess we just hold off. Let's see what's next. Deal? Deal. So we made the Oblivion Shard. Technically, the next thing to make would be the improbable probability device. And then we have the Nexium emitter, and then we have all the singularities, which should be pretty straightforward. Should we start making the singularities now so that they're like prepared? Or I mean, we should have tons of aldemodium, unobtainium, and vibranium, so I'm not too worried about any of that. We did do pulsating black hole already, so let's just do improbable probability device, and then we'll go from there. So what's involved in that guy? Some antimatter from Mekanism. I knew we'd run into that eventually. We knew that would happen at some point. Nitro batteries from Power. 16 million mega cell from mega cell is not a big deal. Flight, I don't think that's going to be a big deal. We just have to find some gas, which I'm sure we can, figure out some way, shape, or form. Vibrant capacitor bank shouldn't be a big deal with how far we've gotten into stuff, and large energy storage from Oratech, which I presume also won't be a huge deal. So our big deal here is we're going to need to progress into both Power and Mechanism. And we know antimatter tends to take a hot minute. That said, I do have copy and pastes for Mekanism Reactors and stuff. So we shouldn't have too much of a problem, doing stuff, I think, like in theory. So we should have no problem, getting things going. So do I want to do like a max size Mekanism Reactor? We could probably do that. So what I'll want to do is fly away from my main base just in case I nuclear accident, anything. We could just be, let's do it in this direction because I don't want to be too crazy, right? This seems like a good enough place. And then we can building gadget. Let's do F3G so that we're all like within like a nice little area. And then build to me like that. And then that. And then that. Too far. And then finally that. Perfect. Is that cool? Definitely not cool. Let's do it like this. Probably going to want this to be a little bit smaller. That should be cool. And then we should be able to max this out if we just angle it correctly. So close. It's hard to nail this sometimes. There we go. One chunk. And then if we decide that we need more chunks, then we'll deal with it, right? So let's get Mekanism Reactors going today. I want to do a max size reactor, and I should have a copy and paste structure for that. And a max size turbine. So like let's just go full blown, like full size, as big as we can, right from the get-go. We're probably gonna need to make lots of fuel for it, but like we can deal with that, right? I think that that's doable. So let's start with our copy and paste. So let me get my thing. So I have a big reactor, I have it called. So if I get some paper, and then we do this, and then we paste it. That's our big reactor. I don't know why all those things are there, but whatevs. And then we should be able to load that onto our copy and paste gadget, right? And then if we check our materials list, that's what we need to make, right? So that shouldn't be too big of a deal. Let's also make sure, I'm going to put you away for a sec, but let's make sure that you guys are all ultimate tiers. And then let's also check out this thing where he can like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's cool. So if I control click, that becomes 16. 3264. Oh, nope. 64. So control click, shift click is 64. Neat. That's cool. It actually modifies the pattern itself. Initially, I was going to say, like, you know, I'm not sure if I like, but that actually I do like. Now that I think about it, right? That's pretty cool. I like it. The only one that I don't know if I like is the Ruby Dust being 2048 all at once, but Ruby Dust, I'm gonna, well, actually, I can shrink you all the way down, right? And then I can do, now everybody will be 64. I'm cool with that. Okay, that's nifty. Now if we get our ultimate upgrades here, that should be cool, right? And now everybody's doing 64x multipliers, which is pretty awesome. All right, I'm on board with that. How do we like that? Do we like that? I like that. All right, so now for mechanism, I'm going to need a control rod assembly. Wrong doohickey. Okay. And then we're also going to need fission fuel assembly. We're going to need fission reactor casings. We're going to need fission reactor logic adapters. We're going to need fission reactor ports. And then we're going to need reactor glass. Okay. And we put you all, zoinks, right in there. And then we can do our control rod assembly will be 128. We'll see how good this goes. Reactor casings is going to be 200. That was easy enough. I'm going to put all this stuff away because in theory I shouldn't need much or any of it, to be honest with you. At least not yet. Cool. Okay. And then we want these guys are on our way. Fission reactor logic adapters. I think you make 2 at a time, but that's fine. We'll get the... Oh, no, you don't. Okay. Reactor ports. We need 10. I guess that was a bunch of quests that just happened. 128, that's cool. 10, that's cool. And then we're going to want fission fuel assemblies. And for that, we're going to need 1920, so about 2,000. And apparently we have enough. And that's pretty cool. I'm assuming that, luckily, we had like a bunch of steel. So this will be a minute to craft. Though to be fair, we're like halfway there. Though I think a lot of being halfway there was me having a bunch of steel to start with. It's actually keeping up pretty well, I gotta say. Wow, that moved a lot faster than I thought it would. Now, if I'm bound, we should be cool, right? You are bound. Yes, cool. So you should be cool to handle this without it actually being in the inventory. Now we need reactor glass, which will be 1523. Which I'll just do 1,600 of. Does that sound cool? And again, that'll be like not too long in theory, because we did, in fairness, have a lot of steel being kept in stock. Wow, that worked out really well. Okay, so now we should have everything we need to build this thing, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and you're going to need a ferro flare lantern to keep things well lit over here, won't you? Offset is fine. So you're going to basically be like a whole chunk, aren't you? I think you are. Let's anchor that and just make sure that you're... Nope. Yeah. Are you bigger than a chunk? I guess you are. I hate that. I hate that you're bigger than a chunk, but I think you have to be. I think you have to be. So let's just... Let's make sure that you're within sort of a chunk, right? Because we don't want to overlap 2 chunks if we can. So we'll go that way on the X so that at least you're on a chunk boundary, right? And then where you're sitting is fine. Now let's I think we're fine like that, but what I would like to do is this. Now I think we want to go one more, right? And that should be our boundary. Perfect. And then we should be able to do you and you. Are we out of bricks? We must be out of bricks. And we do that. See, keeping the brick thing on hand is actually pretty handy. And then out one. And that should be perfect. So now we can load this guy in, right? And that should be fine. Is there any reason I don't want to do it here? I don't think so. Didn't I feral flare this area? Is it not feral flared enough? So part of me, for whatever reason, just wants to move it back some. How about there? Pretty close. We're going to want to bring it up a Y level, I think. And then we're going to want to do something like that. So now you're right on the borders there. So let's bring it forward a little bit more. So that you're back. We're going to want to have a little bit of space in the back. Is 2 blocks enough? Maybe 3 just to be extra safe, right? So like, yes, we're going to cross the chunk boundary, but we have to cross it anyway because it's so big. But now at least we have space. Is there anything on the left that we care about? Yeah, we should probably move it over some too. There. So now it's 3 spaces here, 3 spaces here, and that should be cool, right? I like that. Now, in theory, this should all place perfectly. I guess we'll see if I did everything right. It's feeling pretty good, I gotta say. It's looking really good to me. Is that good? Did I do this well? Oh, on the first try. How great is that? How great is that? Having a copy paste of a max size reactor is 1000% worth it. Because A, I don't have to sit here and question to myself what was the size of that reactor again. And B, I have like all the components listed literally right here. And I know exactly how many of each block I need to place. How cool is that? Like, super cool? I'm going to say yes. So now, guess what we get to do? Very similarly, we get to do another one of those. But it's going to be the big turbine, right? So I'm going to get a piece of paper. Boop, boop. Paste it. Load it. And now we have a giant turbine materials list. Cool. And remember, we're going to need some of the blades because they don't get copy and pasted, but like, man, who cares? So let me craft all this off camera, unless for some reason I run into a problem. But I'm going to like teach it all the mechanism turbine-y things, and then when we come back, we'll place it. Deal? So back in a minute. That was surprisingly quick. It did not take me long to make those, which tells me that I've really set up my infrastructure properly for mechanism. And I really like that multiplier thingy, right? Now, I'm assuming that this thing's going to be pretty big. So let's get ready to chunk this dude out too. Like so. And remember, it does 15, so we want to do this, and then we want to do this, and then we want to do that. Okay? And then we should probably be chunk loading and claiming all of these chunks. Force loaded 25 out of 25. There's like, is there an in-game settings menu for this? Doesn't create have an in-game settings, dude. What's I have to go edit that off camera, I think. All right, I think 250 force-loaded chunks should be enough. FYI, if you're looking to do that, you have to turn on cheats mode. And then if you go into your map here, there'll be a purple gear on the bottom right. And then you can modify those kinds of settings via that. So that is pretty cool. Now let's change your settings menu to not quite be so insane. Kind of like that layout. Only thing is I'm going to move you a little bit to the left. I do want you lined up with that so that you're relatively lined up. Now you are one off from that. Are you one smaller than that? Is that how that works? I guess. So I guess what I'll do is that, and then I want you to come a little bit closer, but not crazy. And then that should be cool. And I forget how many of these I'm just gonna make a bunch. Cool. I guess 28 was the number I needed. Sweet. Hooray! Oh man, remember how annoying it was to try and build these by hand? Whew, just brutal. All right. So with that said, now we're going to need some fuel, right? So like we need to pump fuel into this bad boy, and then we're gonna need to set up some stuffs, right? So shouldn't be a big deal. Might need to reposition some of those dudes over there, but no biggie. Now, did I set up a copy and paste for my machines? I forget if I did. I have one for SPS, so that's cool. I don't know if I have one for... I don't think I did set one up for the machines that make the stuff. So what we're going to want is to get some mechanism fuel, right? And to get this fuel, we're going to need a couple resources, right? But we'll get there when we get there. So fissile fuel is what we're looking to make. So that's going to need uranium hexafluoride and an isotropic centrifuge. And then you're going to need... How are you... What? I guess... I guess you're quite big area. And then we're going to need you with hydrofluoric acid and uranium oxide, which is just a chemical oxidizer of yellow cake uranium, which just comes from an enrichment chamber. So that one's pretty easy. You are going to need chemical dissolution chamber with fluorite and sulfuric acid, which is a chemical infuser, which we already have the recipe for. We're going to need the water vapor from the rotary condensator, and then we're going to need oxygen and sulfur dioxide, which, as we know, we get from the electrolytic separator, and sulfur dioxide can come from a chemical oxidizer with sulfur. So ultimately, what we need is uranium ingots. So let's see what we've got here. Uranium ingots, we have a lot of. We might need more. Sulfur, we have a lot of. We might need more. And then fluorite, we have a lot of. We might need more. All right. So whether we get all that from bees or whatever, I don't know. Now, some of these, I definitely recognized numbers that tell me that we're not getting a ton of it. Like, you have an upgrade in you, but like clearly we're not getting enough. And then what else did we have here? Uranium and sulfur. Where might sulfur be? I feel like sulfur... There you are. So sulfur we are capped out on. So that's cool. We can get more of that. And then uranium. I'm assuming you're in a block form, right? Yes. And you're not capped out yet, but we're, again, going to want to make sure that we're cool about that stuff. All right. So we're definitely going to want, like, lots more of each of those. Sulfur and fluorite are probably the ones we're going to want to prioritize, but let's get the fuel system running before we go too crazy. So let me make some of the machines that we're going to need to get, And then we'll also probably want like a wireless connection to our AE system over there. So let me build all the machines that are going to make all the fissile fuel, and then we'll be ready to rock. All right, so now we want the ME wireless connector, right? Something like that. Something wireless connector. Do I have some of those somewhere? Presumably. Could probably just stick it here, couldn't I? Is that cool? Bound. And then what? I just power it up over on the other side. Is that how that works? I kind of forget. Seems connected to me. Cool. I like that. I'm on board with that. That seems cool. Is that about where I want you to be, or do I want you to be maybe a few blocks back? Works. Cool. And then we should be able to make like a dense cable coming out of there if we really wanted to, though it shouldn't matter too much. I think just regular cable should be fine. We don't really need more than 8 channels usually, and if we do, then we just rearrange. So as I recall, I usually do something like you're sitting in front here-ish. Maybe even one further. Okay, and then we're gonna have our chemical infuser, right? Because that's gonna be uranium hexafluoride from a chemical infuser. Uranium oxide is an oxidizer and an enrichment chamber, right? So oxidizer and then enrichment chamber, right? And then your sidedness will be pushing and inputting from the back, right? And then your power is all around, so that's cool, right? And then your sidedness is going to be output to the left. Chemicals will output to the left. Items will input to there, right? And output there. Cool. And then your sidedness, output to the front. You can input there and input there. Okay. So that covers most of you guys. So I think we should keep fissile fuel on our to-do just so I can remember in my brain which way we're going, right? So from here we need hydrofluoric acid, which is chemical dissolution chamber. And sulfuric acid is chemical infuser. So we want dissolution chamber and chemical infuser, right? And then your sidedness will be to chemicals out, input, and then input, and then energy can input. That's pretty good. I don't think we care about extra, right? I don't think we care about extra in this case. No. So that's cool, right? And then your side config will be back and left, right? Because you're making sulfuric acid, which is going to be water vapor. So we need the decondensator on the back, and sulfur trioxide, which is another infuser here. And then we want the decondensator here. And then you're pushing water vapor, which I think is a gas, right? So chemical output left, fluid input here, right? Fluid's going to go in, and I think you go, forget if you get reverse, decondensating, that's what we want, right? So water is going to go in here, okay? And then you're going to be sulfur trioxide, which is going to be oxygen, and sulfur dioxide, which is the oxidizer. And then you're going to be electrolytic separator, right? So your side config you're going to output there, and you're going to input to there. Okay. And then you're going to output chemicals, and then you're going to input items, and that should be cool. Good. And then your sidedness, the left for chemicals will be oxygen. We're not going to ever output hydrogen. And then your fluids will be in any side, and then you're going to void excess hydrogen. Cool? So you're going to get water, and you're going to get water. Okay? So what we're going to want here are pipes. I guess we could use fluid pipes. Or we could just use export buses, because we don't care that much about channels, right? ME export bus, give me like 10 of these. We should be cool. So you guys are both going to do water, but like the fluid forms of water. Right? Cool. And we're going to need power here in a second, but we'll deal with that in a minute, right? But you should now be getting oxygen and water vapor. Perfect. You're going to get... Boy, did I miss with that. Sulfur. In theory. Right? Sulfur for chemical oxidizer. Is that like the wrong sulfur or something? What's going on here? Your sidedness wrong? Yes. Cool. So there's your sulfur. And again, we'll speed all this up in a minute, right? So then you're making sulfur trioxide, which is going to make... Right? Trioxide and water vapor. And then we're going to want our cables and our flux point. And what's cool about this is we already have like a stupid amount of power going on because of our draconium stuff. So we don't even have to worry about not having enough power for all the stuff we're going to want to do. Right? We can just say bypass limit, and then you guys are good. So now you should be getting your sulfuric acid, and you should be outputting fluorite, which will be inputting, right? And then once you have that, you should be getting your hydrofluoric acid. Cool. And then ultimately, you're going to do uranium. Cool. And then we obviously have to speed and tier upgrade all this stuff, but like we'll get there in a minute. Right? And then your side config has to auto eject items so that you can go in there, so that you can go in here, so that you can make that, and we've got a fissile fuel production line. Sweet. And then we're going to want tier upgrades for each tier. I think only the first machine here gets a tier upgrade, right? But all of them get upgrades. Cool. So only one or two of them get this one. I think it's this guy. Yes, I'm correct. Sweet. And that should be awesome. Cool. The only thing we're going to want to have here is some more acceleration cards for the outputs. Which shouldn't be too crazy to get. And then we just have to pay attention to how much uranium and stuff we're producing, right? So I just want you guys to output as fast as you can. And now you should have no problem maintaining all the stuff we want to maintain, right? We might need more chemical oxidizers, and we'll figure it out. Yeah. The only downside is this pack doesn't have that thing where you can have, like, way more multipliers. Like, where you can have, like, 32 of these. Remember, that was actually really nice for this setup because, like, some of these machines you need multiples of. But, like, worst case, we just set up more machines and we'll be fine. I can fly. Ain't got nothing on me, Phantoms. Alright, so let's wrap up the episode here. We'll come back next time. Obviously, we're going to want to, like, increase the rate at which we're producing. Why does chemical oxidizing feel so slow? Like a better way to make sulfur this stuff? Not really. It just feels slower than normal to me. Doesn't it, though? Doesn't it feel like we should have backstuffed on this, like, way faster? Just feels really slow, doesn't it? Why does it feel so slow to me? We've built this like dozens of times, and it just feels like we should have backstuffed on this way faster. Am I crazy? Oh. We'll come back next episode to find out. For now, Delta I sign off. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Next time we will get, you know, this thing turned on. That thing we don't really care about, but I guess it doesn't hurt to actually capture the fuel. I've not actually checked on this guy in a while. Where are we at here? Oh yeah, we are at we are capped out at 100%. That is a long something. But yeah, we are definitely sending about 1 million FE per tick into the thing, and I'm guessing we're voiding excesses somewhere. Yep. Now, you're what tier? You are tier 7, so the only other tier to get would be tier 8. But if I remember correctly, that requires, like, a stupid amount of Awakened Draconium. Though, in fairness, well, we're not quite there yet. We have 24 blocks. We do have the combs, which I'm surprised to see that we have combs. Why do we have combs built up? We should not have combs built up. What's going on over here, combs, that you have, like, a buildup of combs? Somebody back stuff somewhere? Draconium nuggets? Where are draconium nuggets? Did we backstop? Oh, we did. Dire, please. Explains a lot. Probably have a lot of combs to burn through. All right, for now, wrapping up point. Like I said, I'll point sign off. Hope you enjoyed the episode. You know the deal. Take it easy.